CyberSane. So the class of technology as defined by Gartner, where we fit in, is the category called integrated risk management. And in a lot of ways, you can kind of think about that as sort of a next generation extension from sort of the legacy GRC marketplace there. So just kind of to start out with a little bit of the problem that we're out there to solve, when it comes to information security and cyber, really GRC systems in a lot of ways are kind of being asked to solve a problem that they weren't really intended to solve from the beginning, especially with the increased regulations that are coming out there, both for security and privacy. And as Chuck mentioned, there's just a lot of these things are saying the same thing, just in slightly different ways. And there's an awful lot of redundancy and duplication of efforts that goes into to managing programs, especially when we have to start having to comply with multiple different standards and frameworks. So a little statistic over here from Gartner, that 69% of enterprises state that their current GRC stack is not enough to meet their future needs. And then when you couple that along with, historically, we take a look at the audit function as being this sort of point in time thing that we do, yearly or at whatever cadence is required for our organization based on our regulatory requirements. That really doesn't create a very effective posture for business leaders, for example, to start taking a look at where we might be standing in real time, identifying, where there might be opportunities for us to reduce risk, or potentially even opportunities where we want to take advantage of taking a potential risk. Maybe it makes sense in the context of what we're seeing as opportunities for our business. So this, in many ways, is in support of digital transformation projects, right? And so the statistic over to the right from Ponemon, just sort of backing up the fact that digital transformation, even though there's a lot of awesome technology that's coming out there and we're interacting with each other and with organizations in more ways than ever before, it does introduce certain increased levels of risk when it comes to cyber, particularly when we're not taking sort of cyber and security interests from the beginning as part of determining what type of digital transformation opportunities we're going to take. A lot of times we see that it happens sort of after the fact. You go through and invest a whole bunch of money in a really exciting project, and then the security team takes a look at it and finds some holes in there and kind of delays and things that are associated with it. And then largely, even with GRC systems in place, the assessment aspect of this still remains being a really, really manual process. Most of us, I think, on this call have probably been involved with them before, but having to go through and send spreadsheets out, worrying about things like version control and doing it in a way that's really prone to human error. These are some of the challenges that CyberSane has set out to really eliminate in the space here. So we believe that the only way to achieve secure digital transformation is to transform cyber risk management along with the rest of the business. And this is, a point where we have different customers coming to us at different levels of maturity, different sizes of the organization. And they're looking at cyber risk as a great opportunity to transform digitally as well. Frequently, this is an area of business where, processes have remained pretty much unchanged, maybe over decades even, leveraging the same processes and procedures, and just really ripe for some disruptive technology to change the way that we're managing this business function. So here's some of the logos of the customers and partners that we work with here at CyberSane. We were recognized by Gartner as a cool vendor in 2020, and a lot of that has to do or had to do with our approach to automating the risk and compliance assessment function. So after we finish these slides here, I'm going to jump into the platform and just do a quick high-level demo and show you some of the automation work that we're doing. But at a high level, what Gartner really recognizes is that our approach of leveraging natural language processing technology to ingest different tools and technologies from within the security stack and associate that with controls in real time really had CyberSane kind of stepping aside from the rest of the pack in terms of our approach to solving these challenges. Now, one thing I wanted to point out here is our integrated risk management platform really does have the capability to meet an organization where it's at. We've been developing and putting a lot of resources, especially over the last couple of years, into building out some advanced use cases around automation and also around crosswalking between frameworks, which I'll show you a little bit of visibility into that too. But we've been designed from the beginning to really be able to meet our customers wherever they are at in their security journey. We have customers at all different levels here, from kind of level one, which we're defining as being more maybe reactionary, focused specifically around compliance. But then as we move along through that journey, we have different functionality in the platform that can help us to become more operation centric and ultimately more business outcome centric, right? As we move towards the right in this maturity map here, a lot of the customers that we work with, especially the larger organizations, they already have GRC platforms in place. Some of them may even have multiple solutions in some cases. And CyberSaint really is not positioned to be a rip and replace of GRC. We understand that there's a lot of investment, a lot of time that's gone into it, and that there's also other facets of the organization that are leveraging those type of technologies. So more frequently than not, we tend to live right alongside those and be able to sort of support some of the areas where the workflow is a little bit weak in those technologies, and ultimately glean out the metrics that matter to the business for being able to communicate concepts around cyber risk with different stakeholders, executives, board levels, et cetera. So a quick case study here. This is from a Fortune 50 customer of ours who they came to us. It was actually their digital transformation team who had an initiative from the board level down to seek out some disruptive technologies to change the way that they'd been running their risk and compliance assessment function over decades. And what they were able to identify is that, particularly with the automation aspects that CyberSaint's offering, they were going to be looking at really significant cost savings, projected at $3 million in the first year, up to $20 million in year 3. And that was largely delivered by reductions in redundancy, breaking down data silos almost entirely. That's in support of the integrated risk management function in general, of bringing all the different aspects of IT risk management into one system of record, without having different modules or having to purchase different modules and to start having all teams working from one system. And also decreasing that user friction and decreasing complexity as well. So in the end, regardless of what stage of maturity our customers are coming to us with, there are some similarities of the types of challenges that they're trying to solve. So, starting up at the top here with dynamically managing risks and increasing the program maturity over time, I think that the various functionality that we have to enable organizations to grow into some of the more advanced capabilities is something that a lot of our customers are seeing value in. And then this concept of continuous prioritization, right, and refinement. So that always on type of interface, especially as we start adding in automation from different sources of telemetry, the ability to understand metrics both in a qualitative and a quantitative way. So are we at a point where we're just kind of looking still at maybe likelihood and impact, or do we want to start getting into more quantitative metrics around solution cost and modeling and things of that nature? And then ultimately all this is in support of optimizing our human capital, automating our processes, and proposing high return on security investment solutions. So with that, I'm just going to give a quick walkthrough here of the CyberSaint platform, and then I'm going to pull up a video demonstrating some of our capabilities around automation. So just kind of jumping in here to start, this is our executive dashboard, sort of the homepage for the platform. Initially, when we log in, we can see some recent metrics in the system, recently updated assessments, as well as our overall CyberStrong score. So this is going to be the representative score across all the assessments that we're running in the platform, in this case, 79 in this demo environment. Over here to the left, we're naming these assessments for demo purposes based on the framework or standard that we're assessing against. But in practice, customers generally name these after things like assets, applications, business units, physical locations, data centers, however you're slicing and dicing your program. We have some graphs over here just for easy visualization. This one here is color coded such that any of the assessments here in green represent those where we're performing at a score of 80% or above. Yellow here is for those from 60 to 79, and red is those assessments where we're performing below 60. One of the things that we've done to sort of enable a standardized language around risk and compliance topics across the organization is by standardizing on the NIST CSF. So we have out of the box somewhere around 60 different frameworks or standards just available on our platform, each of which have been crosswalked back to the NIST cybersecurity framework. So in this viewpoint here, we're taking a look gap to goal across our entire program based on the functional areas of NIST. And here we can start taking a viewpoint into the categories. We can also pull together all of the assessments that share a common control family. So all of our SOC assessments, for instance, or our New York DFS. Oh, there we go. Down below here, we have a few widget-based reports around risk. The one on the left here is really a control count around which controls have been primarily associated with confidentiality, integrity, or availability. And then widget-based reports here showing mitigated remaining and residual risk based on business impact and threat type. These are from 830. I'll show you how we get this information in there. So I want to walk just quickly through the manual process of running an assessment, scoring controls, adding supporting evidence, and then I'll pull up a quick video to show how we can do that in an automated fashion. So jumping into the CSF assessment here, dashboards are very consistent throughout the platform. At the assessment level, we do add one additional risk-based report, which is a report by control family. But if we jump into the control section here, this is where the manual workflow really happens. So we have a few different options for how to filter those controls. This version of the CSF is using the informative references from 853. We have a lot of flexibility with how we demonstrate control language. We have versions of just the subcats or sys informative references, really, however you want to see that. So jumping into an assessment here, what we've done in this case is we've taken the control description that comes directly from the authoritative source, or NIST in this case, and we've broken these component parts down into more of a questionnaire format, so it's a little bit easier for assessors to kind of read, digest, and understand. So the workflow manually would be to go through, score yourself based on where we're currently at and where our target score may be. We have a few different options for communicating among our team here. So we have a text field at the control action level to leave notes or explanations. We can always disable controls when they're not applicable. As I mentioned, kind of getting more into the quantitative side of things, we have this field over here that's optional for completion cost. I'll come back to that in a second because that's one of the fields we use to deliver a return on security investment calculation. Collaboration is also affected here on the individual control level, and then compliance notes, just another area to collaborate with your team. And so, you know, the benefit really to this even manual workflow coming off of something like spreadsheets, just having one system where everyone can come in, work collaboratively together, and then have the results of whatever changes are being made updated really in real time in our automated report section. Then moving on to evidence here, we provide the ability to link to URLs of where those supporting documents might live, right? So maybe on a cloud storage, network attached storage, wherever we're going to store that type of information. So that's kind of the manual process to go through of scoring controls and adding evidence. I'm just going to pull up this quick video here to walk through an example of a tenable integration that we have. So notice as we start out here, this assessment dashboard, that the dashboards are blank. So none of the controls have actually been worked for us quite yet. As we go through and pull in this Tenable IO scan, it's going to start to display controls in two different sets here. So this first set, this is what we're calling a static mapping. So here we're understanding that just by virtue of using a vuln scanner on some regular cadence, you're going to get credit for these controls that have been identified when we set up the integration in the first place. So, you know, some of the RA5, CM6, et cetera. And the system will go ahead and automatically score those control actions to yes for you just based on receiving this feed of data. This next set here, this is where we're getting into that more of a dynamic mapping. This is the natural language processing. Here's where we're taking a look at the content of the telemetry source that we're receiving and identifying certain keywords through our natural language processing that's selecting some additional controls outside of those that we had previously statically mapped, and giving you the option to adjust the score either up or down based on what we're seeing happening in the wild. So now as we go back to our home screen here and refresh our browser, you're going to start to see these dashboards light up automatically for us, indicating that the controls were in fact scored. Just in the interest of time here, I'm going to fast forward a little bit. I'm going to pull up RA5, which is one of those statically mapped controls, just to verify that the actions were scored. And then an entry gets left in the supporting evidence tab as well. So the more and more we look towards different tools in the tech stack that may be able to be automated, you can start saving. For some of our customers, they're really ambitious, looking at up to 70, 80% or even above of controls that they're hoping to be able to automate over time. Of course, understanding that it is a journey, it's not going to happen on day one. But we can certainly start to identify some of the more low-hanging fruit, things like vuln scanners, identity and access management's a pretty good one. Cloud native monitoring tools, things in AWS, Google Cloud, etc., are some good options of application scanners. So the next thing I wanted to just touch on here, and really where this all starts to come together, is on risk, right? So we're scoring these controls, we're understanding what's happening in real time, but how does that make its way up to risk to allow us to make more informed decisions? So up here at the top, we have this risk register where we're able to add adversarial and non-adversarial risk to the register. Now we're starting to get a little more granular here on how we're defining risk. So instead of just looking at it like in terms of just a flat out like likelihood times impact, we're defining some more discrete classifications here. Overall likelihood of adverse impacts. We're collecting SLE, threat event frequency. And then because we're organizing our register in the same system where we're running our assessments, we can start associating the controls from within our assessment environment that are associated with this particular risk onto it. The benefit there being that we can track how we've been mitigating risk over time by pulling the control scoring information onto the risk. And that becomes even more powerful as we start talking about things like automation and some of these systems that are more like continuously or always on. So in this graphic over here to the left, we're taking a look at all of the controls that we associated with this particular risk and viewing how we've been mitigating them, what's remaining risks to continue buying down. Over here to the right, we're just breaking it down where each line represents one of the individual controls. So we can take a look if we see any spikes or dips. In this case, it looks like AT2 took a little dip on January 8th, but we can start to drill in and understand how our controls have been performing and ultimately how we've been mitigating our risk over time. And then just to round out some of the functionality a little bit, we have the solution cost modeling section. So here's where we can overlay potential risk treatment options and capture some of the metrics around them that tend to be of interest to other stakeholders, particularly like executive audiences. So when we go and we say we've identified this particular risk and we have also identified a number of solutions that we think would treat it, we can start showing in some of the metrics that matter to them, typically around like capital cost, O&M, how likely we expect that solution to buy down the risk, and ultimately a return on security investment calculation for it as well. We can also track the number of controls that we think this solution would give us some credit for. And we can also track the status of whether it's been approved or rejected based on, maybe having budget turned down or things like that. So a system to track that type of information. And one other thing I'll point out here just around automation in support of helping prioritize where we may want to move forward to move our posture ahead. This optimization section, this is another patented CyberSaint machine learning technology that has been trained on a data set around lowest cost, highest impact controls. So what the technology is doing here is it's taking a look at the existing assessment score, in this case an 87, and projecting it into buckets of low, medium, and high to try and identify the controls that you may want to identify first to try to move the needle from the lowest cost, highest impact perspective. So kind of stack ranked here in order of the ones you may want to tackle first. And then the last thing I wanted to point out here in terms of our automation has to do with crosswalking here. So this is something we're really excited about. We've been working on this for several years at this point. So here's some mock-ups of what this will look like in our user interface in the very near future, most likely in the month of April. So this is in support of that concept of kind of test once and then apply the result of that onto many other assessments. In this case here, we're taking a look at a NIST 853 Rev 4 baseline assessment here. We're selecting crosswalk assessment and then choosing from any of those other 60 different frameworks or standards that we have in system what we'd like to see it benchmarked against. So in this case, we chose ISO 27001. The next step in the process would be leveraging the control mappings that were developed by or proposed really by the natural language processing engine to help to present to the user the mappings that the technology is confident match, and then asking the user to either accept or reject that. So this is something we're really excited to roll out. We're working with some really large customers that have some advanced use cases around how they want to use this. So just wanted to touch on that real quick about something that we've been working on and that's coming soon. All right, so with that, I had said I would end by 4, and it's just about 4 here now. So I'll turn it back over to you, Donna. But just wanted to thank everyone for listening to the presentation. We kind of glossed over really quickly some of the functionality. There's a lot more under the hood here. So if anyone is interested in learning more, we'd love to chat.
Awesome, thanks, Dave. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to unmute yourselves or type them into the chat. We definitely have time for some Q&A as we get set up for the bourbon. I don't see anything as of yet. If you do think of any other questions at all throughout the presentation, feel free to send them to your Atlantic rep, or if you don't have one, just bounce it off of me and I'll get it to the appropriate person. We'll get that question answered for you. And I don't see any questions. Thank you, Steve, for that.
You're welcome. Who
is ready to drink some bourbon? If you're not sharing, I definitely am. I definitely am too. Actually, I already started. But
Does everybody know it's your birthday, Donna?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Does everybody on this call know it's your birthday?
I don't think they do. No.
Did we